Hi, and welcome to Back2Hoops. Today we're going to do a very quick video follow-up to our compact defense video. If you want to see a more in-depth breakdown of this, check the description below, where we will go over with my co-hosts Jay and Dan. Yeah, let's get into it. So this is very quickly just so you can see some of the terminology we're going to use today. So we're all on the same page. We have a zone, means when defenders are responsible for a space on pitch. Man coverage, man marking, one-to-one, whatever you want to call it, is when defenders are responsible for an individual on the other team. And a hybrid is where some players on your defense are working zonally and some are working one-to-one. It's just a balance. Help defense is when we have anybody who is in a position to support another chaser on their team to make a stop. For us, point defense and point defender means the defender who is closest to the quaffle. So if the quaffle moves, the person who's designated point might change. And finally, a lane is anytime we consider something a route to goal. So might have a shooting lane, a driving lane, a passing lane, any way of getting the quaffle from wherever it is to the goal. Okay, so compact defense. That's what we're going to go over very quickly. Compact defense is a zone defense. So as we said earlier, that means each player is responsible for an area of the pitch. Normally, that ends up being one at the top of the pitch, one at the hoops, and a left and a right, forming a kind of plus sign formation. For compact, how it's slightly different is it just drops all of that back and much more together, much more narrow, creating a zone around the hoops and around just outside the keeper's zone line, really. Okay, the idea of that being everyone is close enough to help each other make a stop, whilst also covering where the danger actually is. The idea being you can score if you're at the goal, at the hoops, you can't score if you're at halfway, you can't score if you're at touchline on the wings, so we don't care if you have the ball there. We're going to protect what's important around our hoops. And here you see it kind of as a role. So as I say, we have our point defender at the top, left and right chasers, beaters in the middle, and keeper at the base of the hoops. That's your generic formation if you're facing a more generic offense of two players at halfway, two later receivers. Okay, in terms of zones of influence, you have your point defender who is responsible for tracking the ball and has the top half of the pitch. We're not going to actively engage at that point. We're looking just to shadow, play hands at defense, and draw the defense in. This is a really strong defense, gets a drive-heavy meta, and so we don't actually want to commit them. We want them to come towards us, make where we are more powerful. Okay. Our two wing chasers are our second point of contact. They are covering just outside the width of the hoops. And again, their position is vital. They have to stay in that formation. They have to stay in that space to be able to help the point defender if a drive happens and cover a shooting lane. It's critical that they do not rush out left or right onto the touchline to follow a winger. If they do that, they create a space in behind them, which will be exploited by a good team. They really need to stay in that formation. And finally, we have the keeper. Keeper's role is to communicate where to go for their players. If part of the zone breaks down because someone's being beat or can't keep up their mark, they are covering the hoops, trying to stop the shot, covering the two on the side that the quaffle is on, and nominally they're also covering one deep receiver. The idea being that is the hardest pass to make, the longest pass, and so needs the least coverage. And so they have that back part of the zone as well. If the quaffle moves around, which it is unfortunately wanting to do, the zone just changes its angle. So rather than being a box here, it just changes around at a different angle. And whoever now is closest to the quaffle, they're now the point defender. The person the person furthest away from the quaffle is now essentially the keeper role. Okay, they've got to organise the defence. They've got to be making sure they're aware of where everybody is. Okay? And left and right in this situation do the same job. If the ball goes out to a wing, the same thing happens. The wing chaser becomes points. The keeper and the previous point chaser become the wings, and the far side chaser now becomes the leader of the defense. Their job to communicate. Okay, so the point defender is always the one closest to the ball, and everyone else's role fills around that. You see here in the video an idea of this with Josh Armitage on point, dropping back to their keeper's own line, and we can start to see some of the chasers coming in as well. I have said on this, I think they're a little bit wide. If they wing chasers were 3 steps inwards more, they would actually be in a better position to help. And if the keeper had stepped up, they might also have been able to make a better stop earlier. Okay, so as I say, the strengths of this formation. Really, as I say, it's about a drive-heavy meta. It is very strong about making if people want to run against you. Okay? Because you're so close together, you can help each other out. You can have 2-on-1 tackles. You're even in 3-on-1 in some cases. You're close to your hoops. If you're tap beat out, you can get back in and re-help again. And same with the beaters. Beaters are close to the hoops. They can recover quicker. If they exchange beats, their recovery time is much shorter. The other team is having to run much further to get back into the play. And if that exchange happens over and over the course of the game, your team will be less tired. Your better players can stay on the pitch for longer, which gives you a much higher chance of winning. It also, because they're so compact around their own hoops, encourages the offense to push up and overcommit so as to avoid a delay of game penalty. That can lead to teams getting frustrated. It means they are more prone to making a mistake. And if you do then turn the ball over on defense, you have a much easier fast break opportunity. Weakness, however. So we say it's good in a drive-heavy meta. It does mean it is a little susceptible to a pass-heavy offense. Because there is always one player unmarked, because the zone has to cover the hoops to a degree, that means there's always a pass free, which means that you're constantly having to shift your defensive zone around to reface the ball if they move it quickly. That's fine if everybody's on their toes, everybody's ready. But if that happens over a prolonged period of time, you start to lose track of the ball. Mentally, it gets harder and more taxing, and mistakes happen. At which point, a fast pass and a fast, incisive cut can get in behind the zone, and the zone starts to break down. You see that in games. Bristol, in particular, were very good at this 2 years ago, 3 years ago now. Warwick, or LQC as they are now, basically, their offense was really very strong versus a compact defense because they could move the ball around quickly and their timing was so good. So it is mentally tiring after a while. Whilst you're not physically running around, having to keep track of where the ball is, what your role is on pitch at all times, can lead to a lack of focus, and that can spell disaster. If one person loses track of what they're meant to be doing, that is a massive hole in your zone, which will be exploited by a team that is paying attention. How and when to run it? I would recommend running this defense if your team is good at tackling or better at tackling than they are other aspects of defense, but they're not the quickest. If you've got a very quick team, very agile team, you could play a more man coverage defense because you can go and run around, chase after the offense, put them under pressure a lot. If your chasers are slower, but more confident in contact, playing a defense that maximizes that, makes people come towards you, makes people run at you, that'll be really strong. In order to start drilling that in our offense, you need to get the spacing right. You have all the players on pitch to start with, and just start moving the ball around and get the players used to stepping up, pushing left, pushing right as a pair, so that the distance between the zone is always the same. And it gets used to people communicating where their role is, what their job is, who's a problem, who's a danger. Everybody needs to do that because somebody will find themselves at the base of this defense, being the leader, being the communicator at some point. You can't rely on one person to be doing that because if they're suddenly on point, they can't see behind them. Okay? Everybody needs to be able to communicate. Everybody needs to know what the role is for a position on pitch for each of them. You can build up complexity here. After people have got used to the spacing, used to the timing of stepping up and back, left and right, start adding in beaters, start taking people out of the play, getting beat out, and then seeing how you have to adapt to it. It's a good idea to try and practice this a lot, honestly, early, because the quicker you get this, the quicker you learn it by rote, it means later on you can be thinking, this is my job. I know everybody else around me has got this. They know what their job is. I can focus on me, and it takes away some of the mental strain because you know you're only having to do your job, and you know that people on your team have your back. They know what they're meant to be doing. The other thing to note here is no defense is perfect. Your job as a defender is to try and not necessarily knock them straight over, but to slow down the offense, make it harder, make it a lower percentage opportunity. Quidditch is designed to be scored in. It's rare for a shutout game. So all you're trying to do is, rather than making a 80% offensive opportunity, if you can make it 60% or lower, 50%, over a course of the game, you can pull that range out of swim, out of snitch range, because you're just making it harder for them. You're grinding down their drivers. They're less confident, they're less able or willing to do it because they're more tired, because they're having to run further, they're having to run through more bodies to score. And over the 20, 25 minutes of the game, that will start to tell, and you can start to pull away from it. Okay, and you've got a summary on screen for what we've discussed. As I say, if you want a more detailed breakdown of this, you can find it on our YouTube channel, Back2Hoops, where we go through the slides we've just seen in way more detail. This PowerPoint is also linked in the description of this video, so you can go through it at your own time. Okay. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this was informative, and I will see you all soon.